Hello. Hello, no one at this time and probably ever, but I am going to come on here and talk about things that I just kind of want to talk about, and that I just kind of would like for it to be somewhere and kind of findable. Um, just because, I mean, mainly just, for me, so perhaps I can look back on it and be amazed with my past self as every time I left little nuggets for future me to find. I've always been mind blown. So this is just one of those. Um, but it is also a live video, so I could just get up and close the window. It's not a big deal. So yeah, I'm not gonna worry about making this too. One second, making this too profesh. But I just want to come in here and kind of talk to an audience that doesn't know me and kind of introduce myself and talk about um, times of my life, just both generally and specifically, and things that have happened and things that I have learned from things that have happened. Cheers. Well, nowadays, well, first of all, my name's Andy. Well, let me just I don't know where I should look, if I should like look at the camera or look at myself, but I don't know which one looks better. I don't know because I can't see what it looks like when I look at the camera. I guess I'll try to look at the camera, but like this is very distracting. Like I look so good. But I gotta say, so yeah, I go by Andy. I spell it Andie. My name's Andy. Last name's Schoffelberger. I am Mexican, actually. I I'm aware I sound like an American. It was an accident. I did not grow up in the United States. The longest I lived in the United States was a year when I was 4 years old. But let's start from the beginning. I come from a Navy family, Mexican Navy family. My main language is Spanish, and I could very much be telling whatever story or my stories in Spanish, and some of them I do. But I am kind of Spanish shy because, well, the conclusion that I reached about why I kind of like abandoned my language without really moving, because like it's one thing like kids of immigrants that move to the United States at some point during childhood, and then they gradually stop speaking Spanish, and then they, eventually forget. That's one thing. I haven't forgotten Spanish. I have a life in Spanish. I have friends that I talk to, of course, but I think in my social media, I'm a little bit more inclined to speak out in English than I am in Spanish, just because I'm shy. Like I know more people that speak Spanish than English, and the people that I know that speak English are more open-minded and less prone to criticism that I might hear back, because it's one thing having people criticize you, behind your back, and there's a completely different thing of like when people criticize you and then kind of like make sure that it gets back to you so that you know what they thought of whatever you posted or said. Not that I had a specific incident with this ever happened, but that's kind of like my worry, I guess. Especially my parents. Like my parents know me, and like it's really like it's an ancient thing of feeling like I have to hide parts of myself, but really there's no actual need. I mean, yeah. Um but anyway, and I actually think my story is way more interesting to people that only speak Spanish than to English speakers. Like, yeah, I don't know. I just had this experience so many times, like both speaking to people that only speak Spanish and younger people that is like they're like, okay, and what else, and then what else, and then English speakers just kind of like tend to assume they know everything they need to know about me just by looking at me, and they're generally less curious about how this happened, which it isn't so obvious that anything is, going on here. I mean, there's a pretty girl, like that's pretty much it. But no, I mean, I've been told by like a 50-year old, 50 some year old, that I'm one of the most complex people they've ever met, like in their life. And I was like, well, that's kind of that really meant something, and it wasn't someone, trying to get with me or anything. It was just, but it left me thinking. Um, and I don't know what they refer to, but I think about it sometime. But anyway, let's just start from the beginning. Oh my god, I need to sneeze. I cannot fucking start. I swear to God. Jesus. Okay. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, I am. Let's see. I almost want to start from the present backward. But no, let's start from the beginning. So yeah, I come from a Navy family, Mexican Navy, actually with some history. Yeah, my dad's a retired Navy captain from Mexican Navy, and my grandpa was retired admiral from Mexican Navy, and then his father before that, so my great grandpa, was chief secretary of the entire Mexican Navy. So we're kind of like, in a way, like Navy royalty, which I think is pretty cool. Hold on a second. So anyway, I think that's pretty cool. My my grandpa published a couple books. They're both like Navy themed. One is Navy history, like the story of the Revolution, like what was going on in the waters during the Mexican Revolution. So like Mexican Revolution from like an Navy perspective. And the other was a poetry book about his travels throughout Mexico as a young Marine. So yeah, and so yeah, growing up, I'm what people. Well, I've heard about this term, of course, later in life because I did not grow up speaking English. I grew up speaking Spanish, and this isn't a term that I'm aware of in Spanish. So, but I am what they would call a Navy brat. So yeah, I mean that pretty much sums up kind of like my upbringing on that side. Um, Now, my mom, my dad came from that Navy background, but his father, so my grandpa, wasn't my great grandpa's legitimate son for the first 18 years of his life, and then I think at 18 he went and asked for the last name, and so then he became kind of like officially, a Shuffleburger, a Navy Royal, because he wanted to follow in his footsteps, and he did. And but that guy, so my grandpa had some issues. He had issues of alcoholism. He was an abusive husband, like a beater, a woman beater. And a thief, and many of the things that alcoholics are. um, yeah, who knows, just an abusive man, amongst other things, because he was also an artist. He was a painter, a poet. I don't think he had any musical traits. My dad does. But yeah, amongst other things, he was not the best person. um him and my grandpa had three kids. They had my dad was the middle child, the youngest, my uncle Alfredo, uneventful. I mean, I don't even know why I mentioned him. Um, yeah, no, I think he painted too. He's a photographer. He went on to become a photographer of mainly like a prostitute photographer, which is pretty niche in Mexico City. He did that for many years. I don't know if he still does that. But anyway, and then my dad left for Navy school. He went to Navy school when he was 16 and didn't finish Navy school till he was like, I don't know, fucking older, way older. Like, I don't know how old he was, honestly. But he was in Navy school for forever, like, and just got done with the Navy like 3 years ago, like so recently. So he like left for the Navy and basically never came back. Um, and then they got an older sister, my aunt Angela's, and she is a whole fucking character. I mean, she could fall kind of. I mean, she could be a little bit of like the funny aunt, with the colorful clothing, with the alternative living. She is all of those things, but she's also an awful human being. Usually when you think of like hippies and people who are into like yoga and shit like that, I mean, some people see right through that and they're like, those are the worst people you'll ever meet. Um, but you can also think those are safe people. She was not. Um, but anyway, actually, none of them ever did anything like horrible to me. I don't think. Not that I can remember anyway. But the darkness of the story has to do with my sister. And so my sister was 6 years older than me. And I didn't know this for all of my childhood. I didn't learn what I'm about to say until I was around 26, I want to say, something like that. Um, but my sister wasn't my full biological sister. My sister was a product of a different relationship that my mom was in, um, a 2 year relationship where my mom had like this boyfriend. And actually, I don't know how much of it is true, but I would think as much as I know is, but my parents are prone to hiding things, so I don't actually know. But yeah, it turns out that this guy, like, she allegedly, my mom had dated him for 2 years, and then he got her pregnant and ran off to the United States, and she never saw him again. So she was stuck with a pregnancy that she didn't want, and also that she didn't feel capable of, caring for. And then my dad, okay, so at the time, I actually don't know how old they were, but I think they were like, oh, wait, they were 23. They were 23 years old. Oh my God, why am I so mucus? Hold on. Why am I so muky? So anyway, my parents, they were 23 years old, and my dad was in Navy school still. No, I think he was like no longer in Navy school. He was like just in the Navy, just being a Navy guy. I don't, I don't know the levels of Navy stuff in English because I learned about this in Spanish, and I'm sure they got different names for the levels of it in English, but Let's just say he was newish to it, like he had a low rank, and my mom was a secretary, I think she said, um, or a receptionist of some sorts. So she wasn't like, she didn't come from the Navy school, but she was just like an independent like worker that the Navy hired to do some office job, at the Navy premises. So headquarter, no, I don't know what I'm saying, but yeah, that's how they met. And he claims that he decided that he wanted to marry her the second that he saw her, which I think is kind of creepy. Not gonna lie, like they didn't have any relation. My mom had very fair skin, and my dad had um, um, his skin was a lot darker. So there was this aspect of wanting to marry someone with fair skin. That's another like another layer of fucked up to that. But they were of age. But then my mom, it was like, okay, like he pursued her and she wasn't interested. She had this boyfriend, and then boyfriend's out of the picture. My mom's pregnant, like, and he swoops in. And actually, I don't know exactly how this happened, like, because I think in versions of the story, it's like they were together since she was pregnant, and in other versions of the story, they got together when she had my sister, like, really young. So I think it's the latter, actually. So let's just run with that one. So let's just say that maybe, I don't know, because like they were both working in the same like Navy stuff, like Navy place, like for a while. So maybe when he first saw her, that he knew he wanted to be with her, was like a certain time, and then maybe a couple of years even had gone by when he like saw a chance again, and maybe this was already when she had my sister, because yeah, I think that's how it went. um but maybe less time went by between the first time that he saw her and the time that he saw like a window of opportunity to be with her, where she was in a vulnerable situation, and he was like, oh, I can help, I'll adopt your kid, I'll help you raise her, I'll help you, financially, like I'll take care of you guys, make an honest woman out of you, all of those things. So yeah, they got together, and on their wedding day, and this is like their story. This is not my story. My story starts there, of course. But on their wedding day, my dad gets in this stuck in this stubbornness loop of like, as they start talking about kids on the way to the court to fucking get legally married. And oh my god, I thought I was seeing my boyfriend's van leaving town. I'm like, where is this fucker headed to right now? But that's north. If the fucker were headed anywhere, he would go south, so I wouldn't see him. Anyway, I wait, what happened? So yeah, they got together, and on their wedding day, they started talking about kids and how many kids they want. And my mom is like, well, I've already had a kid, I really don't want more kids. And then my dad goes, well, I want 7 kids. And he was like dead ass serious. And so then they were 2 hours late to their appointment to get married, um, because they kept circling around the courthouse in the taxi cab, allegedly, this sounds ridiculous now that I'm saying it out loud, but this is the story that my mom tells. Maybe they got out of the car, out of the cab, and like had the discussion like outside of the building. That would make more sense to me. But anyway, maybe they were mostly late. Maybe they were like an hour late, and then they did that for an hour. That would make a little bit more sense. But I don't know. That just seems like a crazy long time to be circling around the block. But yeah, my dad was set on 7 kids. My mom was trying to bargain with him, and they finally settled on 3 kids. So she went on to get pregnant before me, like a couple years after their wedding, and she got pregnant with a baby boy that they were going to name Luis, like my dad. And my grandma on my dad's side, so my dad's mom, was a very religious, very wicked person. Um, I can't explain. Like, I've obviously met her, I've known her, I've had experiences with her. All I can say is she was an evil person. Like, I have no way to, no other way to explain her worldview and how she interpreted, life, that allowed her to go about things how she did. But she did. So anyway, my grandma never. She was one of those moms that low key want to fuck their kids, like fuck their like sons. She was one of those moms that's like, no woman is ever enough for my baby boy, and also I kind of want to fuck him, like, and also like I will destroy the life of whoever he chooses, but also even more so if he chooses someone I don't like. But how could I ever like her if it's, I want it to be me and it's not, and she's taking my place, in some level. Of course, she never like said these things, but that was the vibe. So basically, my mom, in her eyes, was never good enough for my dad because she was an impure woman, because she had a bastard daughter. Mm, mm, my lord, outside of marriage, and that was just unacceptable. So this is all alleged. Um, Allegedly, my mom says that this was her experience. I have no reason to doubt it, other than the level of evil is baffling. That would be my only like, really, But she says that when she was 8 months pregnant, that my grandma put some shredded glass in her ceviche, which is like a fish salad with very finely chopped things. So it would be easy, like if you were to hide some shredded glass anywhere, that, like in any dish, that would be like the perfect dish for it. So, anyways, and then that there was, that she was eating ceviche at her house, and that all of a sudden she, notices shredded glass, and then um started having symptoms and ended up losing the baby. So the baby actually was a stillborn, but I think she came up with this theory after the fact, because when they pulled the baby out of her, I think it had been dead inside of her for like a week. So maybe when that happened, she started like retracing her steps and concluded that that was the result of that. but I don't think it was a thing of like she took a bite and felt a sharp pain and like ran to the hospital and then lost the baby. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, that's what my mom claimed happened. The time that she told that story over like lunch, my dad got up from the table like pissed, and was I think he was saying that she was lying, or that just that's not what happened. But anyway, so that was that's my sister and my baby brother that was stillborn. And so then it took them 5 years from, well, actually 6 years, from the time my sister was born to, so my sister and I were 6 years apart. That's what I'm saying. So I don't know how many years they were trying for. I think like five, something like that. Um, and then it was hard for my mom to get pregnant. It's hard for my mom to get pregnant. I think she has like, or she had, or whatever, endometriosis, which I think I have too, which makes it really, you basically like rarely get a period. You have very irregular periods. So it's super difficult to know when your fertile days are, and even more difficult to have a viable pregnancy. But she did have me. I was born at 7 months old in Guaymas, Sonora, Mexico. And I don't remember anything about this place. I know we lived there till I was like 5 years old, and then afterwards we moved to Mexico City. So when you grow up with a parent in the Navy, you're moving around a lot, or at least, that's what happened for me. Actually, unless your dad was very well connected, like I think those who are very well connected actually get moved less. But even though my dad was a junior and the last name had history in the Navy, my grandpa had been such a messy alcoholic that my dad actually had more enemies because of the last name than he did allies. So, but that's just like a little side note. But we were moving every, I mean, my dad used to say that the first grade, my first grade of school, I completed it in four different schools. And he used to say this like it was a flex, like no, like it was like a big accomplishment on my end, like you did that. And I was like, every time I hear this, like no, actually you did that, and that's a failure on your end. Like that was extremely unstable, and I bet fucking traumatizing. Yeah, because I remember there was a whole thing of we moved so often that there was this learned almost like defeatedness of why would I try to make friends if you're gonna rip me away from them in 3 to 6 months. And even from the other kids, like they knew I came from the Navy, and it's like, nope, we've had one like you already. Like I know how you guys are. You're gonna leave. We're not even gonna try to be your friend. We're not even gonna talk to you. So it was like that. It was very isolating, unless at school and stuff. But I always had kids that lived at the Navy housing, and so of course it was always different kids, and so many of them that I will always wonder like where are they, like do they so many peeps that I like remember loving for a little bit here and there, and that I never saw again. And I, like, obviously, like being 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, like you know phone numbers, social media, I mean, wasn't really, that wouldn't really have crossed my mind that much. And if it did, maybe I wrote it down somewhere in a notebook that I like lost. And so, and everything, so much would get lost in every move. I mean, it was very, I mean, of course there was no stability. I mean, the only constant was my mom, my sister, and I. And my mom was constantly angry, overwhelmed, stressed out, frustrated. She was very unhappy. Like I really remember her like an evil fucking monster that was always raging. Um, and a lot of her, if not most of her frustration would fall on to my sister, which was obviously she was older, right? And she had had some developmental issues that doctors had a really hard time explaining. And so they could tell my mom that she had some sort of what do you call it, delay in her development, both cognitive and motor development. But they didn't know exactly what type of, what the diagnosis was. So we don't have a diagnosis. We never did. But there was something just like a little off about her. Um, some of the things, and I mean, this was the 90s, so medicine wasn't as advanced. I'm sure she was like maybe like a little bit autistic, or I don't know. I don't know what else she could have been. I don't know what she had, but she definitely there was something. And so my parents had, especially my mom, because my dad would go away on Navy commissions that would last up to 6 months. So sometimes he'd be gone for 6 months at a time, and then come back for like a week or so, and then be gone again for like another three. And so it was like that most of the time. So my dad was mostly not around, and it was really painful. I think for my mom, I didn't, well, I don't know, right? Because I was a child, but I didn't perceive that my mom missed him at all. I think mostly she was angry. Like she was just mad at him for being gone and for whatever he had to say on the distance. Like, 'cause of course, they would talk on the phone, I guess, sometimes. And she would kind of like report back what she was dealing with at home, um, in terms of discipline with us, like how we were behaving. And I remember that she would complain a lot, that she would complain to me because she would confide in me. Because this is the thing, my dad was gone and my sister was mentally challenged. So it was like mentally and emotionally, she couldn't be there for my mom. Not that she had to be, but even if she had wanted to, she couldn't. Like she didn't have the emotional, intellectual capacity to see the situation and be able to be of support. But I did. But I was younger. So my mom was dealing with my mentally challenged sister, who was, I don't know, the time that I'm talking about, 17. She was like a teenager. um so one of the things that, and this is a lot of, when I tell the story, I go from looking at it from describing it from how I would have described it with what I knew back then, and for how I would describe it for what I know now. So I jump back and forth. So that's why you would catch me saying some like unacceptable things of like she was, or like like she was retarded or something like that. um so because it's the stuff that I would hear at home that was legit, how my parents described the issue, whatever the issue was. So I didn't know what the issue was with her. But one thing that she struggled with was like peeing herself. Like she would wet the bed, yes, but more often she would wet herself just like out and about. Like mostly, I think it was mostly on social situations. And I think then I started like kind of sometimes doing the same thing. But I remember for me that it was like a thing of I was having so much fun that I didn't want to go home and go pee. And so I would just like wait a little too long and like just kind of like, but I was never comfortable peeing myself or anything like that. But anyway, but with her, it was a common occurrence actually up until like she was like well in adulthood. And now looking back, of course, that's obviously like the first sign of sexual abuse. Then there's a part where my dad wasn't her biological dad. So who knows, like I can't say with certainty no that didn't happen or yes that did happen because reality is I don't fucking know and I never will because she's dead. But oh, jumped ahead of myself, sorry. But yeah, my mom let out a lot of her anger and frustration on my sister, and she was very cruel to her at times, or quite often actually. She had beef with my sister because my sister had she was bigger, and my mom was really into appearances and diet culture, and she was always on a diet, and she was always on Zumba or like on some sort of aerobics class or something like that. And she really wanted my sister to care about her appearance and to not overeat. But of course, my sister was so mistreated so often. I mean, she had honestly not like too many responsibilities. Like they just wanted her to go to sleep and like help with the house chores. But there was pressure for her to be something that she couldn't be, which was functional and self-sufficient. Like they wanted her to be good at grooming herself and making herself, like personal hygiene and presenting herself um and then she started like allegedly, right, like telling lies about my parents and stuff like that, just kind of like getting into stuff, stealing and shit like that. She kind of like behaved like an addict, as if she were always trying to like steal something to sell it and buy drugs. But I'm pretty sure drugs weren't the issue. Like, I think her drug was approval, um, because she couldn't get our approval. And I'm saying our because she was very much the family's scapegoat, right? And I think I learned from my parents to unload all of my anger and frustration onto her and all of my abuse onto her. And so it was a thing, it was a family dynamic of she's the butt of the joke. She is, we called her FedEx because we would tell her that, FedEx, brought her, she got delivered. Kind of like in that movie, it's like we saw it in a movie. So yeah, we call her that. And it's kind of, it's pretty fucked up if I think about it. I try not to think about it too much. But that my parents knew that she wasn't my dad's biological. I didn't. So it was kind of like, it's pretty fucked that they had me participate on the joke without knowing, that it was true. So, but that was a common theme actually. My cousins were pretty shitty to her too, and they knew, and I was shitty to her too, but I didn't know why, and they did, and no one had the decency to tell me my entire fucking life. Actually, actually found out by accident, um, back in like around 2018 or something like that, because my mom, who got cancer later on, she had, what do you call it? Pancreatic cancer. She still does. But when she first got diagnosed in 2018, she contacted my sister's dad and, was kind of pleading with him via Facebook messages, to take care of her when she was gone from this earth. But like, I don't know what possessed her to message him that, because obviously if he wanted nothing to do with her whole life, what made her think that he was going to want anything to do with her as and a problematic adult. On top of that, she was very problematic. Yeah, she was very compulsive with healing. That's why I eventually stopped talking to her. Oh my god, my friends with her mom. Everyone's with their mom. Fuck y'all. I miss my mom. I actually just talked to my mom. Oh, fuck all of y'all. I miss my mom. And then my boyfriend said, "Do you want to go to this breakfast buffet on Mother's Day and tomorrow?" So he totally forgot that that was happening today. But yeah, that's off top. I think I was like, I can have like a really good day, but then I think back and I'm like, I think back to a really good day I just had, and I would get sad that I didn't do one more thing that would have made it more perfect, And it's like, oh my god, we just spent all this time together. Oh, but we're not doing the breakfast buffet anymore. What the fuck? Like, I just realized, and I was gonna like say something about it, but it's like, no, he already expressed he needs today and tomorrow to work. So like, can I just let him work and not be upset about that? I mean, I'm not even a mom. Like, why do I need to go to the Mother's Day buffet? So I just let it go. So anyway, but yeah, it is kind of like a day because I miss my mom. But I did talk to her. So anyway, I'm like, is my mom a terrible person? And it's like, yeah, yeah, I think she is. She's a fairly not great person, and also pretty awesome person too. Like, positive enough, She's got good and bad. Like a lot of us, like all of us. So, but her bad was fucking loud, man. It was stressful growing up with her. I just remember, well, being scared a lot. It's not that I thought she was gonna get so mad she was gonna kill me or something, but her reactions were so big and so loud that it was just like a constant state of shock of like, what the fuck is happening in front of my eyes, Like my mom just like screaming her lungs out over like, I don't know, someone like not putting stuff away properly or dumb shit like that. But anyway, I so okay, I don't know exactly where to start, but I always talked about the following as my origin story. So I'll just say a little to chain where we're left off with my origin story. But yeah, that's a little bit about my family and my sister. We So we moved around a lot. We moved 16 times before my last year of elementary. So like before like sixth grade. Well, I actually don't know if it's sixth grade. Um, no, I don't know how the grades work in America, but for us, you have 6 years of elementary, which is from ages 6 to 12. So before reaching 12, I've lived in 16 different ports, been to 16 different schools, etc. So by this point, my mom was exhausted because she had to unpack and repack and set up and pack and again the same house like 16 fucking times. Oh, and all of the apartments that we were moving to looked the exact same. Like there was the exact same layout of everything. Like she was undoing and doing the same fucking apartment 16 times, like once a year, you know? Or like, no, okay, this doesn't make any sense because I was 12. So yeah, like two times a year or something like that, you know? So, in average or 1.5 times a year, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, so she was exhausted. I think her and my dad's relationship had deteriorated enough that she didn't see any point of being in the same city as he was wherever he was gonna get commissioned because my dad getting commissioned in a city just meant that that's where he left from and where he came back to, but it wasn't where he was most of the time, you know. And so it was like not even worth it for her to be at the base just to spend whatever little time. She just like preferred to stop moving every so often. So my dad got commissioned to Champotón when I was 11. Yeah, like 11 and a half. And Champotón is a really small town, very, very, very small town, like insanely small town. 15 minutes past of 15 minutes, I think it's east, no, west, 15 minutes west of Campeche. This is Campeche is in the Gulf of Mexico, the city of Campeche. So we moved to the capital city of the state, which is San Francisco de Campeche. Campeche for the white people. It's spelled Campeche. So I've heard it read as Campeche, but that's not it. It's Campeche. So yeah, he got commissioned to Champotón, Campeche, um, when I was 11 and fraction, and we moved to San Francisco, Campeche. So basically, because he got commissioned there, but as we were entering the town, usually they would send the moving truck, the Navy moving truck with all our shit, and then we would road trip to the destination. So that's what we did. I think we moved there from Coatzacoalcos, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry. Um, so yeah, as we were entering Campeche, my mom was hyping us up and being like, "What do you guys think? You guys want to just stay here? You guys want to stay here?" She was hyping us up, and we were like, "Yes." We're really excited. It looked pretty, and my mom was like, like we had wanted to stop moving, so we were just excited to be in one place. So, oh my god, I can't believe I've been talking for so long. So we settled in Campeche, and I will say it's not a good town. It's not a good town to grow up. It has a very toxic culture, very rapey, very alcoholic culture, and very sexist culture, very, very close minded culture. So it was very, very lonely and very hard for me. And I had some really difficult times in this town. I got there, at 11. I did my last grade of elementary school there. I had my first little boyfriend. Well, actually, it was my second. Because yeah, I had a little boyfriend in my school in Coatzacoalcos, but we had just held hands once. Like it doesn't even count. This guy was giving me drawings, um, and little gifts. Like he gave me earrings. We went on a little date to the park. He gave me a kiss. Like this was my first man. It's so funny. Well, that boyfriend I say that boyfriend like it was like my super serious boyfriend. We were 12. But he was a twin, and I never knew which one was which until until his twins started getting a little chubbier. But anyway, that guy one day like basically called me fat on the phone, and that was like the beginning of like I can remember that moment because like I was never the same before. And also like I never felt that feeling before that day. And so I can very vividly remember because I thought I was the most beautiful girl in the entire universe. But then there was Fabiola in class. And Fabiola, I mean, I knew I was beautiful, but Fabiola was Fabiola. And so it was like that little worm of like, maybe I'm not the most beautiful girl. And then followed by, oh, I have a boyfriend. Oh, my boyfriend's saying I'm fat. And he's asking my size and how many cookies I eat. Oh, you know? So something shattered. Like up until that day, I had been the most beautiful girl in the entire universe. And I had that confidence, which I would imagine would rub a little boy the wrong way, huh? So anyway, fuck that. um, but no, I was in Campeche. What happened in Campeche when we were in Campeche? When I was in, I keep saying Campeche. I don't like how it sounds with the American accent. I don't like how it sounds. Period. Like it's just like an ugly. I don't like it. I don't like it's a Mayan word. Like it's okay, but I don't love it, you know. But anyhow, what had happened is, I mean, a lot happened while we were living there. My sister had a couple of like problematic boyfriends, and like one of them was a Mormon, and one of them was like really into like acting medieval in like the poetic ways. I don't know how to describe this. Like he was like I don't know. It's not relevant. She had some cheesy, conservative, weird fucking boyfriends. And then like an old ass guy that was actually like running errands for my dad. Like he was my dad's little Navy helper that was around the house a lot because he was like helping with shit that my dad needed help with. Like, because we were like trying to like condition this house that my mom had found because we had moved to Campeche and we had moved into the Navy housing into one of those apartments that looked just like the others. And she had set up the apartment for like the 16th time in her life. And she finished setting the apartment. It took her like, I don't know, 2 months since we moved there. And like almost like the day after she finished, like it feels like someone knocked on the door and they told us, hey, actually, like we're gonna need you guys to move out of this um apartment because we're remodeling these apartments. And actually it's only gonna take us like, I don't know, 2 months, but then afterwards you can move back or something like that, you know. And my mom was like, thank you, but no thank you, I'm moving out and I'm never moving back in. And so I think the Navy housing was like 2,000 fraction pesos a month. And my mom, and it was a 2 bedroom. No, actually, I think they were 3 bedroom apartments because I remember there was always my parents' bedroom, there was always me and my sister's bedroom, and there was always like a storage room that we had because we had so much shit from like all the other previous houses. Like we always needed a storage room, so there was always a storage room. So anyway, yeah, that happened. So my mom had found a 4 bedroom house, pretty sure. Yeah, it was a 4 bedroom house, 2 levels, garage for 2 cars, and back patio with a balcony for 1,200, like something like that, something crazy. but it was trashed because it had been a kindergarten, like a in-home kindergarten, like a kind of like improvised kindergarten that had gotten um, backed up with on the rent, and they had trashed the place because they were resentful that they were getting evicted. So it trashed the place, like literally, like left a bunch of trash, but also like caused damage, and it needed like some work and remodeling. So that's why this guy was always around. I would only refer to him as Ake because in the Navy you only refer to people by their last names. So I just knew him as, I think, Ake, which is a Mayan last name, Ake with an accent mark on the E. So Ake. Um, so I remember Ake. He was, you know, brown guy, like, I don't know, black hair. He was around 27. And he started fucking, he started fucking my sister. And my sister was like 16 or 17 at the time. And so when my parents found out, it was equally a thing of like, well, my dad beat his ass and there was obviously repercussions for him. But I feel like they almost blamed her equally, like it was equally wrong that she did this. And they were really hard on her for doing this and for pulling this because she had humiliated them. And so then my dad, what is this guy doing? Is he signaling me? I don't know why he would. Um, I'm by the freeway, by the way, so I got like cars right outside my window. But yeah, that's what happened. So my dad beats this guy's ass, and well, that was a problem because this guy then went on to sue my dad, not on regular court, but like on Navy court. And my dad went to not regular jail but Navy jail. And so while he was in Navy jail, basically what it was kind of like being at uni, like being a college student, but he had to sign in that he was in class every day. Um, and then he got to go home and do whatever, but he had to sign in like 5 times a week or something like that. So yeah, so he had to be in Mexico City. This whole thing happened in Campeche, but the disciplinary action in the Navy jail that he was sent to was in Mexico City. So he had to leave and go to Mexico City and stay gone for a whole year without pay. And so then my mom had my sister and I, and my dad was gone, and there was no salary. So she was in trouble. And but in the last place that we had lived in, not Campeche, but the place before that was Coatzacoalcos, which is in Veracruz. I did not like that with the American accent either. That felt so wrong. Coatzacoalcos. Um, she had made a friend whose name was Luz, and Luz had a clothing store. Oh my god. Luz had a clothing store in a little plaza. Like this plaza looked like a market, looked like a mercado. If you're familiar, if you've ever been in Mexico, you know that mercados are literally the Spanish word for market. So so you know what a market is, right? Okay. So she had like a little clothing store at the market, and my mom had gotten really into it. Like she had stopped by her little store and talked to her for hours, and they became really good friends. And my mom was always drawn to um um and businesses and being an entrepreneur, and like she was really drawn to having and making her own money because for the entire of her marriage, like my dad had been the sole breadwinner, and I think there was a lot of maybe limitations, or there were like control things that like she wanted freedom to do whatever with her money, or I don't know what it was exactly, but I know she was always eager to make her own money. And I know that she always like sold shit. Like before that it was like jewelry and like catalog shit, like whatever she could get her hands on, like she would sell. And still till this day. And so she was in trouble. This wasn't when she was in trouble. Before she was in trouble, before we moved to Campeche, she made friends with this lady who got her all excited about 100% cotton, like natural fabrics, like clothing, like handmade, artsy, like crafty, like clothing, and Mexican brands of this material. It's called manta, which is like untreated cotton or something like that. And 100% like cotton fiber, like super natural, like, but kind of virgin or whatever, this material, like cotton fabrics. So it's called manta, manta. And so she got really into ropa de manta, so manta clothing, or cotton, natural cotton, 100% untreated cotton clothing. And she had already started her little store, her little boutique. She called it a boutique. And she sold manta clothing, which is actually insane that she sold any, like she didn't study the market, like the neighborhood where we were at. Like I've been to that neighborhood again, and like I can't imagine a clothing store like that in that neighborhood, in that school, in that street. But it did sell. Yes, it did. Like, like there were enough, it was like a small enough city that some people with money had nowhere to spend it, and like would drive around and see it and be like, oh, what's here? Oh, let me go in there. Oh, let me buy this overpriced thing. Like, but yeah, so it worked. So yeah, the store became the main income, like right away. Like I think the store was fairly new when my dad got into that situation and we needed to rely on it fully. But yeah, so it had to be something that we could rely on like almost right away. And we did, like we survived somehow, and we relied on that solely, and it was great. Well, except that we had to spend a lot of time there. And then in all of my mom, because my mom went on to have many more endeavors after that, and I feel like that was the first one where my sister became like, I wanted to say fully involved, but my sister wasn't willingly involved, and also my mom wasn't nice about it. Like it wasn't a thing of like, oh dear daughter, like will you help me with this? It was a thing of like, I think my mom like blamed her for what happened, and I blamed her too. And so it was a thing of like she had to make up for it by working at the store. And then that translated to she had to be at the store all day every day, you know. And that was the beginning of my sister's exploitation, history of exploitation, since from the time that she was 17 to her death, basically, which was when she was 32. So 15 years she was exploited heavily, by my mom, and she was always forced to work at my mom's businesses, longer than full time, like all day, every day, like 12-hour days, easily 6 days a week. So, for of course, in the beginning, no pay, but then once when she was, over 18 or whatever, um, she would get $4 a day for 12-hour shifts in the kitchen, because then the clothing store transmuted and it became a restaurant, and then my sister was head of the kitchen at the restaurant always, and she was there all day every day working a lot. She became like a working machine. She was actually very hardworking, maybe because she had no choice, like it was all she could give my parents that they could be appreciative of or happy with, because everything else she couldn't give them. Like she couldn't really be a person with a personality and an interest and a career and a put together person on top of their hygiene. Like she couldn't function like a normal person, but she could slave away and stink and keep away from everyone as not to embarrass anyone, and be stinky in the kitchen, and overeat in the kitchen and be overweight in the kitchen where no one saw her. And oh man, I'm getting overwhelmed actually. Yeah, she she suffered a lot. I mean, she left home when she was, well, I was gonna say 17, but that's not right. It's just that she acted 17 when she was much older, because she was, delayed. She had like a delay in her development. So the incident when she was 17 that she slept with Ake, that you could look at it as typical 16-year-old behavior, but really in her mind she was more like 12 or 13, so like that was really like an instance of like child abuse, and not really like if we look at it as how old she was mentally. And so then when she was like 20 something, I think, I have no idea, I think she was like 21 or something like that. Let me think. She was like 22, and we were in the same high school. Like she was only one grade above me in high school, because she was so behind in her studies, because she was behind. um and so we were in the same school, and she dropped school, and she only had, because like if you fail a class, afterwards you could take like a test and try to save that whole like semester with one test. And so I think she had to do something like that, of like a thing of like she could still save the one class that she still needed to save, because I think she had saved other classes, but she needed to save this one class so that she could save the year, because like without that class she couldn't pass the year. It was so fucking loud. um and so instead of saving that one last class in fucking high school, she like ran off with a fucking guy. I have no idea where she met him. um but yeah, so